Hey guys, it's Lauren, and today we are going to talk a little bit about hip positioning when you're sitting in a chair and how you can help assist your kiddos sit in a better position with their hips so that it can make sure that their walking is not affected. This is specifically for kiddos who are maybe a little bit more impacted, have a diagnosis of cerebral palsy, or have a little bit more trouble with ambulating. Maybe they need supervision when they're ambulating or walking around. Stay tuned. So the biggest thing that I want to come across is some hip positioning basics. So if your kiddo sits in W sit a lot or has their knees turned in, so maybe if they go to bend down, their knees come together, or they sit in this W sit position where their bottom is between their legs. Super tough for me personally to get into that position because I actually have really tight hips in the opposite direction, but a lot of kiddos will sit in that position, and what it does is it actually functionally shortens your hip muscles. And so if you spend a lot of time in the W sit position, your hip can turn a little bit more internal because those muscles get tighter, and those muscles tend to get tighter anyways. So your internal rotator muscles are the ones that bring your knee toward your other knee, or both your knees together. Those muscles tend to be muscles that get tighter more often than your external rotator muscles, or the ones you utilize to do a figure four position or sit crisscross applesauce. Now, if those muscles tend to get tighter anyways, and then we exacerbate it by sitting in W sit, or a kiddo sit in W sit more often, then it's just going to kind of be a repetitive cycle. So if your kiddo is sitting in double U sit, it may have impacts on how their hip muscles develop and may contribute to difficulty walking. So essentially what we want to do is utilize verbal cues in order to avoid W sitting position. So asking kiddos to fix their feet, make your body look like my body, and then sit crisscross applesauce. So if I was here and a kiddo was sitting right here and they were in W sit, I would say, hey, make your body look like my body. Let's sit and crisscross applesauce. And then just cueing them, requesting it multiple times, saying, hey, will you fix your feet? Fix your feet for Miss Lauren. Or, sitting on we sit on our pockets. Basically saying the pockets of your pants can be helpful. There's a bunch of reasons why sitting W sit is not ideal. That will be in a different video, which I will link down below for you guys. So the biggest thing is, if your kiddo struggles with W sitting, when they're sitting in a classroom chair or a chair at the dinner table, what we want to make sure is that their knees aren't knock-kneed or in this kind of W style position when they're in sitting either. So a couple of exercises or just positioning changes that you can do is, if your kiddo is sitting in a chair and their knee is like this, you can put tape on the floor. So about hip width, you can put 2 X's on the floor underneath where their knees would be in this position, and you could say, oh, feet on blue or feet on X's, and that would cue the kiddo to put their feet flat on the X's. Instead of, if I bring my knee together, you can see my ankle juts out, where otherwise it's straight on. So if you have the kiddo fix their foot position by putting it on a piece of tape already placed, maybe at the dinner table or in the classroom where they typically sit, if you notice that their knees are together, or teachers have mentioned it before, that's a really good option. Another thing that you can do is essentially put a pillow block between the knees. So if their muscles, their adductor muscles on the inside are really tight, you can put essentially what a blocker would be between their knees and have them do classroom work like this. This is less ideal because, again, if they move, it can fall out. So preferably having tape on the floor or some kind of visual cue for the kiddo would be helpful. Plus it allows them to take ownership of moving their body so they know that this is the movement pattern. This is where my hip is supposed to be, not here. The other option that you can do is if you have a peanut ball, which I will link up here. If you have a peanut ball, you can have the kiddo sit on the peanut ball, which is essentially going to functionally strengthen and lengthen your adductor muscles, which are also another group of muscles that tend to get tighter. And so that's going to essentially stretch their muscles out so they can sit, and they would essentially sit in this position. They would kind of be like in a wider squat like this. Or you could have them, if you don't have a peanut ball, you could have them sit backwards on a chair. This position is going to stretch out those muscles and help assist them in maintaining good flexibility, which is then going to allow their pelvis to move better while they're walking. Especially if you have a kiddo with developmental delay, it's really tough for them to walk if their knee is caving in, because they would essentially walk like this, which does not allow them to heel strike or to be able to bring their leg through and swing phase. Because if your knee is caving in, this leg is functionally longer than this leg. So it's hard to pick this up because you can't flex your hip if it's internally rotated. Like it only goes so far. Like it only goes like this far, where if my hip is in neutral, I can bring it all the way up here. So those are kind of some of the functional and background ways that are really important in understanding how positioning can actually really affect gait and how kiddos move in the school environment or even in the home community environment as well, and how some different changes in position can really functionally lengthen some of those tighter muscle groups, like your internal rotators, which do this, or your adductors, which bring the knees together. So if you have any questions, post them in the comments below. Make sure that you add anything that you have questions on. One of my favorite things to do is make videos based on things that you guys are excited to learn more about.